Bienvenidos and welcome to Despierta Boricua Pro Libertad's video podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Benjamin Ramos of the Pro Libertad Freedom Campaign, and I'll be bringing you the latest updates on news, culture, and cultura from La Isla de Puerto Rico and throughout the Puerto Rican diaspora. Before we begin today's session, we really have to wish our sisters a happy Women's History Month and a happy belated International Working Women's Day. Women have been at the forefront and the center of our movement in the past 25 years, and not even just the 25 years that I've been active, but for decades, women have been the backbone, the brains, the feet, the legs, the hands. They have been all the body parts to keep our movement going forward. All of our victories have been because there have been women in leadership and women struggling and women fighting against chauvinism, classism, and racism. So we are a powerful movement because we have our sisters with us. So and that's today's podcast theme. We're going to be talking about the state of affairs with women in Puerto Rico. With us today is Esteli Capote Maldonado of El Frente Socialista of Puerto Rico, as well as several other organizations and campaigns on the island. She'll talk more about that. So we're just going to start it off. Esteli, I know it's a very strange question to ask, but what is the general state of women in Puerto Rico? What is happening to our sisters on the island?
Well, hi to you, Ben, and to everyone in the States from Puerto Rico, the archipelago of Puerto Rico. It's so glad to have to being invited by you. I'm honored. If we go to the question, where do women stand, the status to state in a way? I think we're struggling as we women are struggling as we see our rights being taken back. So many women that have fought about for us, and we right now feel the menace of those rights being taken away from us. We've experienced high levels of violence, the rise, the growth of violence against women, against the physical and verbal violence in the domestic space, in the family space for one side, but also in the work environment as well. We are experiencing new and old, but higher levels of violence as well too. On the other part, I gotta say that I feel as a woman empowered that the legacy of the woman that came before us, right? But I also feel the urge and the worry of how the legacy that I'm gonna leave as a woman to other women or other the younger woman as well.
Esteli, you were talking about violence, and I feel like in the last couple of years, we've been reading so many articles about femicide in Puerto Rico, women being killed. And it's been shocking. Those numbers and those statistics are insane. And I just wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about that. What are the conditions that are taking place in Puerto Rico that are creating all of this femicide?
Well, I think we have to go back to the origin about equity in our society. Laws still and this had a lot of ramifications, right? Right. One of them is the domestic space, which still is a patriarchal. How do you say that?
Patriarchal
Space where a law will protect men. It's a men's law. And men's law established, the mainstream law established that men provides work, labor, and woman in a standard, it's supposed to, the action of the woman is supposed to happen within the home. We know that is just an ideal of this patriarchal capitalist state, right? We know that women have to provide labor as well in many levels, but one issue that remains bringing violence against women in the domestic space is this non-written rule taught even by our elders, that what happens in the house stays in the house. The matters of the house stays in the house. For one point, and I'm gonna be diverging in different levels. I'm sorry for that, but for one side, we women are not supposed to be talking about our relationships, personal, marital issues outside of our home. And that's an imposition, a social imposition, a cultural imposition, where woman is subjected to resolve the issues within the home. And we don't have the right? We don't have the tools and the power to have a two-side debate or discussion of our matters because of the pre-establishments, the prejudice that exists of the woman's position. You will find a small discussion between a woman and a man in the traditional couple. Yeah, I'm not going to use the couple. Will happen when a woman will try to ask a husband to do more or to equiparate the work in the house. For example, let's do things together. And a man will say, whoa, hold on. I'm working outside. Why are you asking me to do things in the house? That's one. The labor in the house. It's assumed the social, the culture, the political social culture imposes that labor towards women. I've sometimes hear even my friends saying, oh, you have a great husband. And he is. Roberto's a great husband. I'm not talking about him, but people will tell me, oh, he helps you so much. He's not helping me, He's not helping me. He's just sharing the responsibilities. But that's a discussion, that's a level of discussion that some women in Puerto Rico, a lot of women in Puerto Rico are not allowed to have yet.
Because the idea is he's helping you with what's supposed to be your duties. So it's a very psychological thing.
Definitely. You are asking him more of him. You're asking him to do more. And I find troublesome that when you try to establish equality as a concept in a couples, and now I'm not talking who's the woman, who's the man, it can be whoever, a couple. How do we determine the responsibilities and how do we share them? It's very difficult the violence begins there when you're not even able to have a healthy discussion within your home, within your interior, within your space, your intimate space, of how that responsibilities are taken, are being shared. And I'm talking about the workload in terms of how to maintain the house, but we can expand that responsibilities on the on the couple's responsibility as well. The spiritual and the mental health. We've seen women taken, and I'm now moving from this interior space, the house space, the household. We have seen how women have taken more responsibilities. They have been, I have friends who have they have to work outside the 40-hour load, but they now have to take care of their elders, their mother, their father, because they have become sick or they simply have become old enough. They cannot live, uh, they cannot live by themselves. And it is a problem because society and the law expect for the younger to take responsibility for your elders. And that's okay. That's a great thing to do. But who is taking responsibility of those labors, of those social issues? Is woman who's taking responsibility of that. And socially and culturally, we keep promoting that is woman who is the one that's capable, the one that's empathically more naturally oriented to do those types of jobs. And I see a lot of women, and I have felt it like that, even though I shouldn't consider myself in that position, but I've seen how women have become extenuated of dealing with the house, with the child, with the elders, with the work. And I now gonna take you to the other level of work. We now live in conditions where women don't have the ¿cómo se dice? La certeza, the certainty of a good job.
Mm.
Now, my generation, my dad and my mom, my dad in particular, my mom didn't have that opportunity, but my dad had a permanent job. My mother, as a woman who was academically more prepared than my dad, always was working under a contract, a yearly contract. But that's another issue because that's because of politics. She was being carpeted. How do you say carpeted?
Like blackballed because of her politics. Yeah.
Yeah. But my dad's, my mom and my dad, our previous generation had the labor rights that we're fighting for. They had a permanent job. We women don't have that. We young people don't have that. But it imposed an extra pressure over our shoulders because we have to be very careful within our environment, our work environment. We cannot be political in our works. We cannot be not even labor rights vocally active because we don't have the confidence that we will have a work tomorrow. What you can have, it's a letter of resignation of you better resign or we're gonna kick you off, and that's gonna look so bad in your resume. So we have to deal with our domestic issues that we cannot talk about because society doesn't allow us. And what happens is that we became so burned. That's the word that you use. We become physically burned, and we become mentally burned. And sometimes we have to just let one thing go. One thing is going to explode, and sometimes what finish exploding, it's the house. And there's where the violence occurs against the kids, but occurs against the woman as well. So we're living in a very precarious and level of a psychology precarious level of grounding. You know,
women are living in a pressure cooker in Puerto Rico. They're living under where there's all this responsibility, there's all of this stress, And if one thing falls, then you're a complete failure. That's always some of the psychology that I hear that comes from Puerto Rico, que una nación of super women. You have to take care and do everything. Y si algo falta, if something is not done, then there's a huge problem. But that type of pressure doesn't exist for men. Men have their own pressures and their own forms of repression, but when we look at where women are at economically, politically, sociologically, psychologically, it's una cosa bien diferente. How Esteli, there's so many organizations in Puerto Rico that deal with civil rights and all that. How do women fit into that? Like how are these groups addressing that with women?
Well, the other that one of the things that we're doing is we're having less kids, and that's great because there is so much we can do. And if we cannot take responsibility for ourselves, we are not even in the psychological and physical state to keep ourselves good. And that's something important that the woman movement has done. The feminist movement have taught us that we need to be well in order to take care of others. That's the first thing to do. And the other thing is that we are taking less responsibilities. Some people say, oh, well, people doesn't want to get organized. You know what? It's not that we don't want to get organized. It's that we recognize either we do well with our kids and the soccer and the school and the extra assignments and the sports and the art classes and everything, or we go to the marches and we go to the organizations. And in some way, I say this because I'm glad that an older generation has taken care of us and are guiding us to the way and helping us. So for one side, I want to say that we are taking care of ourselves by as I said, being aware of ourselves, taking care of ourselves, organizing, not only in organizations, but socially. We now meet women, and we have, like to say, clubs, right? I just had a friend of mine leaving the house, and we were just sharing experiences with our kids. And we can do this in a weekly basis, and sometimes in a monthly basis with other women. And that empowers us in a way that is not formally organized, but is socially organized in a way that we begin to understand, untangle the issues that we have in our minds, the worries that we have with our kids, and we begin to share our experiences and understand that we are not the only ones going through that process, one. Secondly, that there are different ways to resolve it. I have a way of doing it, but you have another way. And I think what you're doing there can help me do my work as a mom too better. But also we help each other in other ways. The other thing that organizations are doing, it's promoting the self-awareness of violence and how it occurs. One of the things that I love is that although we are recognizing violence, physical violence happens, we are entering in the process of prevention. Feminist movements are explaining to women how that physical violence first comes in the verbal violence, and how identifying verbal violence can help you prevent and run and save your life before physical violence happens. And this is very important. I can mention organizations in Loíza doing this right now, Matia movements doing this, teaching women to hear the voices what they are being taught. And verbal violence, it doesn't only happen in the house. Verbal violence happens with our elders. For example, when you're trying to say something to your mom or your dad about how your partner make you feel with something, and they are saying, but you know what, they begin justify that person instead of recognizing your uh, sentiments. Did you say sentiments? Your emotions, your feelings. That's verbal violence too. That can become verbal violence too, and that teaches us who do we share information with too, because blood is not necessarily the healthy environment that you need to be sharing information with. Maybe it's a psychologist, right? Maybe it's a couple psychologist. I don't know, just as an example. Maybe you begin with your friends. And verbal violence is not limited to couples. It's also with family that happens. And these verbal skills that we need to be hearing. Who's talking to me, like how they are talking to me. It's also learning us women who's toxic. Yeah, toxic relationships, toxic toxic family, toxic friends. Because as we were talking more earlier, we women are taught to be helpers, and that's something that we have in our nature. We are always trying to help. We are nurturers, we are mothers, we bring life to earth, and it's something that might look natural, instinctive to protect and to help. And we sometimes turn more labor to our person just by trying to help others. And we have to learn. Feminist movement are helping us to put limits. Other thing that in terms of legal status, our feminist movement doing in Puerto Rico. You know that in the United States, there's a huge movement of the conservative movements, organizations to take back the abortion as a right.
Yep, absolutely. State by state, there's states that abortion is now illegal, and they're working on legislation where if you want to go from one state where it's illegal to a state that's legal, so that you can get it done there, that you will be held accountable under felony charges. So they're trying to control women in those red states, especially since most of them are red states. They're trying to control women's bodies in an insane level.
I was watching yesterday. This is a small story. I was watching TikTok, and I had a Alabama woman. We are Alabama woman, but it was very cynical, criticizing the system where they pretend we're getting into a very deep shit here, but sorry by the word. But they were saying like, we are Alabama woman because we take responsibility of our kids all the time. And they were showing kids were probate a tube with just liquid. And they were criticizing the system because you want me to be a mom of what? My right to protect my life, my body, goes before someone that goes before. It's a priority before something that is not even tangible. And that's the thing that they are making. And the movement in Puerto Rico has been very bold in saying, don't step on the abortion thing because we are gonna get the streets. You're gonna meet us again. It's gonna get big. And that's very important because when you have so many levels of violence, And when we feel we are not protected by the society, when we feel we are menaced every day by so many forms of violence, we have the right to decide if we bring kids to this world or not. And we are letting the world know, be it capitalist, be it communist, be it whatever, that if we women don't feel that we have the protections, the equity, the equality that we need to feel protected and to bring a future society on board, we have a right to just not have kids.
And it's funny that you keep saying that because the other day I saw something where some Boricua conservative PNP, pro statehood, he was talking about, and it was interesting. It was happening in March, Women's History Month, hablando that the most important thing that Puerto Rican women have to do is to have more children. That's how we build this nation. Tener muchos niños. A woman's main biological imperative is to have children. And then later on, there was another conservative that said basically the same. And people forget that Puerto Rico is very conservative. These people making these statements is very common. Otro pendejo out there starts talking about that when women get raped, we have to recognize their participation in it. That woman decided that she was going to walk around with that short skirt. So men are going to be men.
Right. Yeah.
So I think people, our listening audience, remember Puerto Rico is very conservative. You may see a lot of news and people protesting and certain radical politics out there, but the reality is Puerto Rico is very conservative. And when you have these politicians and civil leaders going out there saying that it's a woman's fault that she gets raped, she should not have been wearing those clothes, and saying that it is a woman's job to have children, it is very telling. And they're doing all of this in Women's History Month. So it's un ambiente bien interesante that most people are not aware of.
And I gotta tell you something, and a lot of people in my family won't be happy with this, but it's not it's not casual. This is not serendipity. That when conservative movements grow, there is all the religious movement grow first. And United States, it's very we cannot take our eyes. Che Guevara would say, a los gringos ni tantito así, ni tantito así. And what he meant by this is precisely that United States manages. They are great strategists. And one of the main strategies that they have managed in Puerto Rico is the conservative religious discourse. They are bringing more people, more misioneros, more, how do you say, the Menonitas, and more whoever. Here in Puerto Rico now, we're not talking the same way they did when they invaded us in 1898. And we have to be very careful with that. And it's not only happening in Puerto Rico, it's happening also in Black communities in the US. It's also happening in Latin American countries. I'm telling you, in Cuba, they have been bringing money to the religious movements, organizations, to help restore the conservative movements in Cuba. I've seen this in my travels there. I've seen how people have become Protestant in an atheist state, in a communist state. How the United States have used religious in the past and is using it now to bring this conservative bullshit of religious, of family, of the mainstream couples, woman, man, bullshit tradition. And I'm sorry I get upset by this. right? But this is happening today. And the other thing that you see is how these religious people with the money given by church, by private church that don't pay taxes, which is criminal, are also appointed to political positions, senators, and they are corrupt as well. See the Tata Charbonnier as an example, and she's not the only one.
Oh no! All the conservatives in Puerto Rico that have been arrested for money laundering and exploitation, all of them were big time Christians and Catholics. They were the first.
It's a machinery, and it's well oiled, as you say in English. They know how to do it. They don't have to give money to the state. They go through the Christian, right? Like the mainstream couple, the Christian organizations. They foster conservative politics and they are not even, and they promote these people to statehood, to become a political, to become part of conservative political parties, and they then promote for them to become a part of the chambers, members of the chambers, to promote political conservative practice. But the important part is that when they are making laws for the one that give the money, which are the late law 2022, which has nothing to do with this conservative thing. For that, they are very liberal, you know, and there is where I get really mad, because you see the hypocrisy, the demagogy. Do you say that? Demagogy. And for one side, you are blinded, conservative. God is the reasoning for that. But for money, oh no, we are very liberal. And you have to decide, right? And that's the position where woman is put. Going back to our main topic. That is the position woman is put right now in Puerto Rico. The double standard. You want me to be a great laboring in a great worker, but you want me to be a great mom, but you want me to be a caretaker with no payments for that. And what else? Coño, there's so much I can do, you know? And what about you? What is the state? And what we're doing, that it's the end of the root of the discussion, is that women, and some men too, are taking the responsibilities that we are supposed to be, that the state is supposed to be doing, that the nation is supposed to be doing. We, in our personal level, ahead of beyond our capacities, we are taking more responsibilities that we can manage. And that's what brings the craziness, the instability. And add to that we cannot forget Fortunio with the law 7 basically shut down the family department. And where poor women are going to be looking for psychological services for them, for their kids, for their elders, where? They don't exist. They are private now. In what position are we putting women to serve the community, to be part of the community? Privatized services, doing extra job. I was talking to a woman this morning. She's a mother of one of my son's classmates, you know. She has 3 jobs. 3 jobs. How do you expect? We have parents close to children, parents who can guide children, And then we ask ourselves, well, how do we raise kids? Well, how we can. Like
You find a
juggling.
way.
We are like, ¿cómo se dice malabarista? How do you say malabarista? Like,
Oh, even I don't know. Oh,
jugglers.
jugglers. Yeah,
We are jugglers in the line, like, you know,
on the
maybe
tightrope.
at the same time we're juggling. That's the situation woman is here in Puerto Rico.
Mm.
And I don't I don't think it's different. We can see differences in different countries in Latin America and in United States. You can definitely talk more about that. In the levels, right? In the experiences, the practices, the everyday life practices, but that we are experiencing high levels of violence, different levels of violence and repression, and at the same time, exigencias, it's a request from society. It's tiring. It's tiring.
Esteli, you're talking a lot about like laws, and just with everything that's been taking place, a lot of us in the diaspora are following what happens with Promesa and La Junta and the family code that was established in Puerto Rico, which many people were criticizing the family code for being like homophobic and anti-woman. Just with all of those things, Promesa, La Junta, the family code, again, like what is the response from organizations? What is the response of women? Because there's just, a lot of what happens con La Junta and Promesa and all these things have direct correlation to women, especially since Puerto Rico is also a country where there's a lot of single mothers that are working the 5 jobs, raising the kids, taking care of the elders. You have all these services disappearing. So how are women really interacting with that, surviving with all of that legislation and all of that politic that's, contra mujeres?
Well, not the only, but the main way that we know how to do it is in the street. We are going against the junta. I am aware that the feminist movement in Puerto Rico, the OPMT, the Organización Puertorriqueña de la Mujer Trabajadora, which just with this 8th of March it was the 50th anniversary. We are in the streets. This we are taking the junta. We are every time they try to impose restrictions on programs which are directed to women, we mobilize organizations which take care of women who had gone through a violence, are in the street fighting, go to their senators, go to their representatives. We are requesting more money for this type of organizations, saying, you know what, if you're not providing the services, you got to give the tools to the organizations that are doing it. And when they try to put requirements, conservative and religiously based requirements to those funds, we are protesting, and we're making the community, the society, aware of those religious bias statements. En Puerto Rico, de 8 de marzo collective and the Colectiva Feminista is very active in denouncing this, the efforts, and putting the pressure on the representatives so they don't pass the law. it has been very difficult for them to go with the code as they presented it. The last time they had to close the Capitolio because women were gonna knock down the doors, right? And I laugh at because I don't want to cry, right? But we are taking the street all the time, and sometimes I feel like, and I'm ashamed of saying it, but sometimes I say like, I fucking need a break. We're all the time on the street fighting. Every Friday we have something to do. Every week is something new. And now add to the Palestinian thing, struggle that we need to be there too. The Palestinian struggle is the women's struggle, is the colonized countries struggle, is the invaded countries struggle, and what they are doing, even in the most oppressive and negative conditions, is what we need to do. Remain in the streets fighting for our rights. It puts me in many trouble when I would say a Burger King or a fast food, not to use any, but I see a boss yelling to an employee woman, and I would say, you know what, you have rights. If he wants to tell you something, he needs to approach you in another way. He's violating your rights. He needs to talk to you in private. If you want to have someone as a, ¿cómo se dice? Como testigo.
Witness.
As a witness, you have the right to that too. You don't have to accept that kind of verbal violence. Because there is a line, and he's trying to make you the fault of it. But that action as a person is an action that we're taking as a group in the streets too. And I think that's one of the main traditions of, as you said in the beginning of in the introduction of the program, one of the biggest learnings that we have for the women's fighting, it's precisely taking the street. There is how do you say, a fallacy, una fallacy, saying that you can make things going and working through the laws and conversation. No, it doesn't happen like that. You have to go to the streets first. We need to be in the streets. It's difficult, it's hard, it's tiring. Add that to the many other responsibilities that we have. Yes, but that's what the feminist women are doing in Puerto Rico every day, mano, every day. You have a great leader here, Jocelyn. From the Jornadas Se Acabaron las Promesas, mano. This woman, I really admire her. You know, she's on the street, she's letting us know. Josie Pantoja, Alida from Claridad, Josie from OPMT.
Sonia Santiago, Natalie Ibrahim.
Yeah, they are on the street every day. Every day.
And that is the legacy of women. I mean, that's how things are. That's how progression happens. We're in the street. We're taking leadership. Women, you know, it's the case of, I think it was Angela Davis that said that's the case and the reality of women, and the legacy of women throughout the world is a legacy of struggle, of fighting, of moving forward. That's how, you know, the things change, because they're out there. So, you know, that's the evolution. And I think, folks, this is where we're going to thank Esteli Capote Maldonado for being with us today. It's a wonderful way to end, is that women's struggle is a struggle, and they are out in the street. They're building, they're creating, and this is how our society has moved forward, has been those incredible women out on the street. So again, Esteli, thank you for being with us. Familia, this has been your March edition of Despierta Boricua. This is part one. We look at what's happening with the state of women in Puerto Rico. We're also going to have another session sometime this month where we're going to look at Puerto Rican women in the diaspora. What's going on with Puerto Rican women in the United States? And I know that the diaspora is more than just the United States, but in particular, we're looking at the United States. So Esteli, muchas gracias. Thank you for being with us today. Como siempre, everyone, like, share, subscribe, join the channel. We're going to bring it probably in the next 2 weeks. You'll be getting that part 2. We wanted to start in La Madre Patria, what's happening with women in Puerto Rico on the island, and then we're moving towards what's happening in the diaspora. So como siempre, thank you.
Two things to end, if you allow me.
Go for it.
I just want to say, for one thing, we don't need more kids. If we want them, that's another thing, right? We need for the diaspora people to move back to Puerto Rico. That's one. The best place for our chancleta is the streets. Are the streets. That's where our chancleta is the best, you know?
Beautiful.
So thanks for inviting me, and please share this. And, you know, we are a fan of you, Ben.
Gracias. All right, so folks, please subscribe to the channel. Like, subscribe, share. You're going to be getting another edition sometime in March. And of course, every month we bring you a segment. Que viva Puerto Rico libre.
Que viva Puerto Rico libre y socialista.